Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Wait a few minutes till everybody board. Okay, today we're going to start chapter 8, which is talking about NLB, which is stand for network load balancing. This is really not new. This is an old technology. It's been around for a long time. So we'll see if we can. The objective is to configure network load balancing and configure a failover cluster. Okay. So let's see if we can do that. I think it's doable. We'll see. First of all, why we need network load balancing? Or let's define it first before we say why you need it. What's a network load balancing? So use a server cluster to provide both scalability and fault tolerance. So basically what that means, I'm sure most of y'all have Netflix or you go to certain website. So if you have a website and have a lot of users hitting that particular server, okay? So it's a good idea to have multiple servers to handle all high traffic. Okay, so multiple hosts to handle thousands and thousands of traffic. But you know, the domain name is associated with what? With an IP address. So how it's gonna access multiple servers, and each server has a different IP address. So that's what the NLB comes to play. So we're gonna have on multiple servers, for example. Let's say as like a website. Okay. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have a multiple server hosted that website, and we're gonna create one logical. Sorry. We're gonna have one logical IP address associated with group of servers. And that's what's NLB. And so we can do load balance. So we can have, like, say, 100 or 200 or 1,000, 10,000 of people hitting that server, that server, that server. So we can have some kind of load balancing to distribute the load of traffic. Okay? So that's basically the main idea why we have to use NLB. Of course, how you configure it and how you set it up, how you tune it, it's up to you, and it's up to the requirement. So that's what the chapter is all about. Now, why we need a multiple server? You know what they say, huh? They say one is none, two is one, right? For fault tolerance and load balancing. Now, if we have one server and that server goes down, okay, so you have 1,000 of users, they cannot access that website. They cannot stream some audio or video or whatever, okay? So that's why we need to build some kind of load balance and fault tolerance, or I would say fail. If you have a host that fails, so we can have a spare or cluster of server or group of servers to handle that traffic. So that's basically what they're talking about. And they give you here some kind of example. Configure network load balancing. So that's your clients right here. And this is your NLB cluster. This is a group of servers. And you can put up to 32 servers in cluster. So you go from 1 to 32. And as you notice, each one of these servers is supposed to have like 2 network cards. One to connect to the network and one network cards to communicate between the cluster itself. And that's why if somebody, for example, a server failed, would have no heartbeat, so would fail over to the other server will take over, or the load will go to other servers. Because usually where you configure there's no ideal server. It's basically you can distribute the load. You can say I want to put, like, for example, 25% of the traffic goes to server 1, you're going to have 40% to server 2, and the rest in server 3, whatever. Now, I mean, how you make decision like this? Well, it depends. It depends on the traffic. It depends sometimes on population, where it's coming from. But you can distribute the load. Okay, so you can say I want to put on server 1 like 50% or whatever, and that's what we call weight. You put a weight on a certain server. Or, for example, if you have server 1 has 20% and server 1 goes off, then server 2 and server 3 you're going to take that load, and that's basically what's the purpose for it. So, what does that mean from the client perspective? This guy over here is hitting a different number, different IP address. You notice that this server is 10.12.1, .2, .3, .4. But over here they have .100. So that's the IP address of the domain whenever the client will access. Only they know this IP address. And this is basically, it's a not private, it's a virtual IP. It's a virtual IP. So this virtual IP is going to have its own MAC address. And if you notice, it's on the same subnet as the rest of the servers. And of course, on the server, you might have another network card. It maybe has 10.12.2, and 10.12.2.3, and so on. Now, the other net will only communicate within the cluster. They communicate with itself to sense the heartbeat. And this is the only way they know, okay, the other server is gone offline or something. And that's why we need the other network card for communication between the cluster servers or the cluster nodes. Okay, any question at this point? My allergies acting up. That's a common problem in Louisiana, right? I guess I'm supposed to take some steps there. All right, move on. Installing network load balancing. NLB cluster do not have any special hardware requirements. Yeah, but important that each server in the cluster is configured with the same OS version and updates. That's helpful. And servers participating in the LB cluster should not provide services other than the ones the cluster is providing. Now, for example, you cannot have Active Directory on it. You cannot have DNS on it. But, like, for example, if you configure it to do, for example, to handle some customer requests, like, for example, a website or to stream videos or whatever, then you can. Basically, have one function. Okay, that's basically what. So now, what they say, you can have a different hardware. It doesn't have to be same hardware. But if somebody, rule of thumb, okay, somebody, for example, setting up a business and wants to configure NLB, you're not gonna have one server is HP and the other one is Dell and the other one is Cisco. You can have, I mean, common sense. And sometimes when you buy servers, like especially you build the cluster, first of all, you're going to get the discount, buy in bulk of server. Second of all, you didn't need to have expertise for different hardware. So it's recommended to be the same hardware, but it doesn't have to. All right. But what's recommended to have the same operating system version, like 2016, 2012, whatever, 2019. Now, sometimes you will have a different version and you can upgrade it. So it's no big deal. But sometimes, let's say you build that cluster in 2012, and now we are in 2016 and 19. So if one server failed, I can take it out, put a new server, 2016 or 19 on it, and I can upgrade the rest of them. We're going to see how you can do that. Okay. NLB must be installed on each server in the cluster. Well, first of all, you need to create the cluster. That's the first thing you need to do. You need to enable NLB. So you need to create the cluster first. Then you add servers to it. So the networking service to be load balanced must be installed and configured identity. Yes, identity means what? Because we have some settings. So we have to configure identity. The servers in an LB cluster should be configured with 2 NICs. That's what we're talking about. The 2 NICs. One for communication with the network clients, and the other for communication among cluster members. That's basically what the picture's right here. This one here. So this network here, you might have a network card here, say 10.12.2.2. And this has to be, let's say, supposed to be like 10.12.2.3 and 12.2.4. Those will communicate with each other in the same cluster. And this one and this one and this one communicate with their clients. So that's what's recommended. I don't know why Cengage, they still use old looking server. This would look like in the 90s color servers. It's an old looking servers. Anyway, ideas. Question about this one here. So that's what we need to have at different NICs. NLB is installed as a feature. Aha. Because I was going to install it as a role. I couldn't find it, so I found it in the feature. So NLB is installed as a feature in Server Manager or using PowerShell. Of course, you can do anything you want to do in PowerShell. NLB is configured in the Network Loading Balancing Manager. So after you install it as a feature, you go to Tools. After you go to Tools, you click on the Network Load Balancing Manager. Once you go there, then you can configure the rest. Basically, you create the cluster, you add hosts or servers to the cluster, and so on. And you do the rest of the configuration. And that's the initial step. Question at this point. No question. Okay. Move on. So what's the steps to create an LB? First of all, create an LB cluster involve the following. Create a new cluster. Wow. Before you get to this point, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to add the features like they talk about here. See, an LB is installed as a feature in Server Manager or using PowerShell. So before you do that, before you go to that step, you need to do this first. Okay. Let me move up. Created an LLB cluster involved the following. Created a new cluster. Selected new host and network interface to participate in the cluster. So once you click on the new host, you're going to see two IP addresses for that host. It's already, you're going to see it. Well, first, before you go to this step, you need to prep your host, your computer. Basically, you need to put an IP address for the subnet that's connected to the network, to the client, basically. And you need to configure the IP address, the other IP address that will communicate with the cluster with a group of the other servers. Then configure the host priority and host ID. We're going to see in a few seconds. By default, the first server you configure is going to have a priority of 1. But you can change it if you want to. So the priority goes from 1 to 32 because you can add 32 hosts to the cluster. Basically, you put 32 servers in one group of clusters or cluster servers. So as you add these hosts, you can put priority. Now, it doesn't mean that the first server you want to put 1, but that's how it defaulted to 1. But you can change it if you want to. Now, you have to be careful. When you select priority, the lowest the priority, the higher, or that's basically the server is going to take the load. Because if you're in the failover cluster, that means that's the server that's going to be the active one. Or if you remember that one we did in Cisco, that's the server that takes all the traffic. But if you distribute the load, that will be okay. So now it will be no problem. And also, this is going to be the host ID. Now, after that, you set the cluster IP address. The cluster IP address, like we mentioned earlier, is supposed to be what? The virtual IP, like we talked about right here. And that's what they mean by cluster IP address. That's a virtual IP address that you put for, like, if the client wants to access A website or something, the domain will be with this. Point you to this number. This number is not going to change. Now, once they hit this number here from outside, now when this server will load to go to this server or this server or this server. For example, the first customer comes in, requests information from the website, you got to go to this server. The second one goes to this server. The third one is going to this server. This one, if you have a low equal load balance. It depends how you configure it too. Sometimes this guy always hit the same server because it's on cache, and it depends how you configure it. If you configure it to do so, it'll still go to the same server, no matter what, unless if that server is not available. Then it goes to the second one. Okay, any question at this point? Okay, set the cluster name and operation mode. This is very important. This is where you configure it, and this is where you can determine the behavior of the communications between the clients and the cluster server. All right? That's the operation mode. And we have some rules. We can do some rules. This is where you configure what we call the port rules. I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. The port rules basically define, okay, because you put the cluster servers, or the cluster basically has multiple servers. Now, what is the main function of these servers? What applications go to serve? Well, you can determine that by what? Port number, because every application, like we talked about in Cisco, on the transport layer, every application is supposed to have what? A specific port numbers. So when you set the port rules, means what? I can put, for example, range of ports that the cluster will serve. Or, for example, if I want to, if the cluster only serve a website, so we only, or the HTTP traffic basically, we just put port 80 as the port rules. So they serve only port 80. If this is, for example, a different application has different port, then we need to list that port. So that's what we call the configured port rules. And that's how you add server to the cluster. You add server to cluster is very easy, but before you do this, you need to do this. You need to create a new cluster first. And here it is. Once we get to the feature that I discussed earlier, you install the feature. Then you go to the network load balancing. You get to this point by going to the tools, and you click on the network load balancing. Then you get this a picture right here. Then you can go to cluster, you click new, or you can right click here and say new cluster. Okay, so, and that's how you start. Once you create a new cluster, then after that, you start adding servers to the cluster. Now, question to you guys. How many servers I can put in one cluster? Let's see who's, all right, Brandon. 82, that's very good. All right. 82, that's true. Now, any question at this point? questions? Okay. Let's see. Okay, when you create a new cluster, you must specify a host to participate in the new cluster. Yes, this is basically where you start adding the servers. Enter the server name. After the NLB manager is connected to a specific server, you'll ask to select the network interface the server will use the cluster. Actually, you can see it. Okay. Choose the interface to be used to communicate with the client computer accessing the cluster. So you're going to have two NICs, one for the clients and one for the NLB. Okay. Actually, this is the picture. This is how it's going to look like. That's your server right here. You see that? That's the server. Connect to one host that is the to be part of the new cluster and select the cluster interface. Okay, we have server MD1. You connect it, then you get this one here. Interface available for connecting a new cluster. This is basically because this one has two IP addresses. So they have the 10.2 and the 1.2. So this is to communicate with the cluster. And the other interface is to connect to the clients. And you hit next. Then you say configuring the host priority and host ID. Guess what? The first server or the first computer or whatever you want to call it, host to put on the cluster is going to be what? What is the default ID or priority? It's going to be 1. So can you change it? The answer is yes, because it's going to give you an option to select from 1 to 32. This will become the priority of that server and the ID, the host ID. So you got an option from 1 to 32. Cluster member with the lowest priority handles all cluster traffic not associated with a port rule. As a port rule, basically you can define, like on the different server, what port they should handle. Okay. So you can say, I want to have this guy for this kind of port, and this guy for this port, and this guy for that port. And it can be overridden by defining specific port rules. So that's another setting. We're going to see that in a few minutes. Okay, the virtual IP address, the address network clients use to access the networking service provided by the cluster. That's the IP address that I showed you earlier in here. That's what you need to configure. This guy here. Select host, we did that. Configure host priority. Okay. So that's what we mean by the virtual IP address. The address network client used to access the networking service provided by the cluster. So that's what the client sees. The DNS host record should exist for the cluster name mapped to this address, which is true because when you say you have to create something like a zone on the DNS that to point to that particular address, to resolve the address. Let's see. Where's my pencil right here? That's the zone. For the DNS, it's a zone. The zone basically responsible about a domain. Like for example, if I put ABC ADC thing, okay, .com. Okay. To go to this one here, you're supposed to have, you have to put, you need a DNS to resolve this domain. So we're going to associate this one with this virtual IP. Yeah. And that's what we need to put. So you need to create some kind of server called, let's say, www. Okay. You're going to create, under this zone, you're going to create what we call a record. A record. Well, this is the worst tools. We need to improve that tools. So the A record basically it maps the server name with an IP address. So we're going to map the www with, let's say, 200. Let me select the easy number 1.1 and .1 dot 8. Why I put 80 because it's in the port number 80 website. That's 200.1 dot supposed to be dot 1 dot 80. So this will be mapped. So when you go to the internet to reach www dot ac.com, okay. Well, like we talked about, computer does not understand this garbage right here. So we need a DNS to resolve the domain name and IP address. So once we resolve it, it's going to go to this zone right here. And that zone, they're going to look for the A record right here. Who has the A record for www? Then they can see this is mapped to this IP address, and that's how you communicate. We're going to have one chapter about from the next semester about, or two chapters actually, about DNS. So over here, you need to have a record, okay? You need to have a record that's associated with this IP address. Basically, what server name associated with that IP address supposed to be have a record. Otherwise, how some people on the web is going to access it? You have to have a record on the DNS. Now, if using a single NIC, the cluster IP address is added to the NIC TCP IP properties. And if you're using two NICs, the cluster address replaces the current address assigned to the IP. This is basically to resolve the domain name or whatever, or the name of the machine to that. Okay. Question at this point. Setting the cluster name and operation mode. Cluster name and operation mode are set in the cluster parameter dialog box, which is true. Cluster name is the fully qualified domain name the client used to access the cluster. Fully qualified domain name is what? Is in the form of, for example, www, it doesn't have to be www. Let's say you can say server1.cisco.com. That's a fully qualified domain. Or you can say whatever server name, www.cisco.com, whatever. And that's a fully qualified domain. So that's basically you have to use a format. Server, whatever that server is, dot the domain name. And that's in the format of fully qualified domain. specified in the full internet name text box. Okay. The cluster operation mode specifies the types of network addresses used to access the cluster. You have unicast, multicast, and RGMP. So you have three choices to make. If your system supports IGMP, that's the best one. Because with unicast, you're gonna overflow that particular subnet that belongs to you if you do unicast. And it's risky for spoofing, I think, the MAC address. So you can use the IGMP, which is the Internet Group Management Protocol if your system requires it. And this is what they recommend to use. If not, you can use, okay, if you want to use the first one, unicast is required to have 2 network cards and 2 MAC addresses, one for each one. Now, on the multicast, this is basically you use a group of numbers to communicate. But according to some books, they say using Internet Group Management Protocol is the best choice to use. Unicast is the default option. If using only one NIC, use multicast is best. Let's see. Yeah. And that's the screen what we talk about. So you put the IP address for the cluster, subnet mask, and that's a fully qualified domain name they talk about right here. See, so they call it NLB. NLB in this case will be the server. This is your domain. This is .com, .private, whatever. And this is the MAC address for this cluster. Okay. Question at this point. No question. Looks like you guys went back to sleep, right? Let's see. Guess not. Okay, so let's move on. This is basically the screen right here. Define the port rules. Okay. Port rules specify which type of TCP or UDP traffic the cluster should respond to and how the traffic is distributed between cluster members. Now we talk about the weight, okay? So cluster member can be assigned a load weight with traffic distributed proportionally based on the load weight of other members. So you can say 50%, 20%, 30%. So that's basically how you distribute the load. So basically, if you have a beefy server and good server with a newer operating system, maybe you can give them more. It has more processing power. Maybe you can give them more weight than the old server. Okay. So it depends on how you want to set it up. The higher the load weight, the more traffic that member handles. You see what I'm saying? So that's basically how it works. It's like you have 3 guys handling the task. One guy is really sporty, can handle to lift a lot of weight, whatever. Okay, so you're gonna give him the heavy stuff. You have a skinny guy, an old guy like me, maybe you tell him, okay, just carry this small stuff. And that's the same thing in here. So now, also you can set up based on the port number. And then the port number. But there's a lot of different settings. Okay, so this is the port number, how you handle it. Port rules, you make the port rules. See that? So by default, when you go to the port rule settings, by default, you go handle all the ports from 0 to 65,535. Really, that's not a good idea to do this. So sometimes what you do, you change this one here to, you can go to edit, and you say, well, I'm going to use port 80 or port, whatever port for that application. That's how you set it up. You don't leave anything by default. Okay? So, but that's the screen where you can select the port number. So what port number are you going to select? What do you think? What port number I want to select? All of them? Well, you need to select the port number based on the application you have, or the task you're doing. Okay? So if you want to handle, like, for example, internet services, so you need to put, like, for example, from port 80 to port 80. Okay, so that's basically the only port where you handle. So once you get to the screen, you need to have some kind of idea what a port that specific application support. Because that port number is very, very, very important. Because if you don't know the port numbers, you don't know the port numbers for the application you handle, you're going to have a lot of problems. First of all, you need to set it up in here. Second of all, you need to make sure it's open through the firewall to be fast. Otherwise, you're going to be blocked. Okay? So all this is together. Okay, so what are we at? We finished with port number, port rules, yes, and added cluster. Added servers to the cluster, add servers to the cluster, it's easy as apply. Basically, once you go to the cluster, you need the cluster, you right click on it, and you add host to the cluster, and you follow that wizard. An LP feature must be installed on the server you want to add, must select the network interface the server will use to communicate with the client, must assign a priority. What's a priority? Priority or host ID is the same thing. After you have at least 2 servers in the cluster, you can further configure the cluster. So you can put up to 32 if you want to. That depends on the traffic you do. And it's very easy. Once you create the cluster, you can go over here, add host to the cluster, and that's how you do it. So add one at a time. After that, you configure the NLB cluster divided configure cluster property, port rules, and post priorities. This is how they divide it. So let's go each one of them. Cluster properties. Right-click the cluster name in the LB manager. Click cluster properties. Cluster property include cluster IP address. You need the IP address that the client can access. The cluster IP address is set when you create the cluster, can be changed in the cluster IP address tab. Okay, but if you change it, you need to make sure you adjust it in the DNS. Okay. But want to assign more than one IP address to a cluster when running multiple instances of the same services. Yes, you can do that. And you can go to the properties, basically, right here. And you can change it. cluster parameters. And after that, you do configure the rules, the port rules. Basically, you can edit. Like the first screen I showed you earlier, you can edit this screen. Right here, you can edit it. You can edit, and you can specify what ports you want. What port you want, or range of ports, from port 80 to port 60, whatever, and 90, whatever. You do that. Property port right here. That's the picture for that. For example, start cluster IP all. You can start from 0 to 22, port both disabled, mode disabled. So they have only port 23 and N23. What's 23? Port 23. Not available. Priority not available. Priority. That's the telnet, right? Port 23. And you can disable the rest of the ports. So, port rule description. TCP and UDP traffic that directed to any cluster IP address that arrives on port 0 through port 22 is discarded by all members of the cluster. As you can go from 0 to 22 is disabled. This is single. Mode single means what? When you put that in mode single, like for example, if you have a client, let's say access host 1, you always can access the same host. Because let's say you have 3 servers in the cluster. Server 1, server 2, server 3. If you put them on singles, they always can connect to the same server. Okay. We're going to see some, yeah, that's it. This is filtering mode, 0 to, over here you say all. Since you have only one IP address, you put all. This is the only single IP address on the cluster. The port range, you can put here, you can adjust it. A protocol, you can specify if it's TCP, UDP, or both, you can do that. And you can see, for example, this is multiple hosts. That's the filtering mode is multiple. And you can put that's the single, or you can filter based on what? Subnets. So that's posted on the subnet. Oh, let's see. What else do you have here? And that's the explanation of this one here. An option for filtering mode are multiple hosts. Traffic on this specified host is load balance between all cluster hosts. That's multiple hosts. Single host, a host with the highest priority handles all the traffic on the specific or specified ports. Client affinity value none means what? Any cluster member can respond. Now, if you put them in single, that's what we talked about earlier. Requests from the same client are directed to the same cluster host. So it's like this. Let me see if I get my pencil right. So let's say you have a 3 server right here. That's a different model. That's why they're not identical. Okay, and you are here over here. So if you have a single request from the same client, if it's a client affinity value of single, that means if you request the service to this guy here, you always communicate with this particular server. Okay? That's what they mean by affinity value, the single. If you have none, affinity value none means any cluster can respond. So if we have none, any of these can respond. Okay? If you have a network configured with network, means it depends on the subnet. You can put them on based on subnet. Okay, so you filter the traffic based on subnet. Any question at this point? No questions? Configure for rule. This is when you configure the host properties. To configure host property in LP Manager, right-click a host and the cluster name and click host property. And you can do this. Notice on the priority over here. Okay, the priority is 1. So this is going to take most of the traffic. Okay, the priority 1. Now they have some setting where you can do the wait. Now, default state, you can see this is like stop, start, or pause, I think. So this is one of the options. We're going to see it in a few minutes. And of course, you can edit this one. Yeah, this is it right here. Okay, so a cluster IP address tab shows the cluster IP address. The cluster parameters tab shows the cluster parameters. I don't want to go through all this. You can see it right here. That's what we talk about, the weight. Remember that? This is, for example, load weight, that's 50. That means this one load is going to handle 50% of the load. And the port range from 23 to 23. See that? Question at this point? No question. So let me go see if I can show you how to do that, like in my server. Let me finish this one first. Let's see. Manage this one. Yeah. Let me see. Let's see if my machine's on. Oh, I need to put this machine on. Just give me a few seconds to boot up my server. I want to pause for a few minutes, a few seconds. Okay, we'll wait for the server to boot up. My server's sleeping, I guess. Anyway, so managing NLP cluster, you might need from maintenance tasks on the cluster servers. Now, what kind of maintenance you want to do on the cluster servers? Maybe you need to upgrade the version. So you have to take it out of the cluster first, then you upgrade it, then you put it back. But how about if you have some clients, okay, already connected to that server, so you cannot take it out of the cluster. So they have some settings, basically, once they end the session, then you can take it out, okay? And that's, let's see, what are the options here? Yeah, drain stop. Go to the, you go to the server that you want to update or change the settings on. For example, you can start it, you can stop it, you can suspend it or resume. But this one, drain stop, basically, you have some client already connected to it. You don't want to take it offline because the client's connected to it. So you put drain stop, and basically you serve whoever's connected, but it's not gonna connect to the new clients. So it's like you go into a store and you say they close at 9. So they close the door at 9, but still some people in. So once they serve all the clients, and once they go out, then they close the door. Okay? They don't let any people in. That's pretty stop. Okay? Especially at this point. Now, why you want to go through this? For multiple reasons. You do fix the chain, or you want to upgrade. Maybe this is 2012, you want to upgrade 2016 or 2019, so you do that. Question. And that's what we're talking about, upgraded NLB cluster. So upgraded NLB cluster to new version of Windows Server by taking all cluster hosts offline, upgrade each host, and bring the cluster back online. And also use a rolling upgrade, which involves taking each cluster node offline, upgrading the host, and then bring it back online. That's the most proper way to do it. Okay, so you take one server at a time. Maintain uninterrupted access to cluster services, all NLB application support. So, before performing an LB cluster upgrade, keep the following in mind. Verify all cluster services are supported on the new version of the OS you are upgraded to. The second one, and which is the most important part, use the drain stop, like we mentioned earlier, option. Each host before you begin to upgrade. So basically, you need to serve that customer that's connected to. You need to end the session first. After you finish the session, then you can do the upgrade. After finishing the upgrade, verify all services using the work correctly before bringing the host back into the cluster. I think that's why you have so many different groups of clusters. Alrighty, let's see, my server's up. Yep. Let's see. Remote desktop. Oh, remote. What's the password? COVID-19. I bet you a lot of people use it as password. Okay. Oh, I have this one on. Okay. I think this stuff. Okay, so that's basically what I have. Of course, I don't have multiple servers here. I have one server, but I'm gonna test it tonight to see if I can do it on. I'm sure I can do it on virtual machine. So we can create cluster of virtual machines. So what we're gonna do is we go to tools right here, And I'm looking for something called what? Network load balancing manager. This one here. And that's the screen that you saw earlier. Then what you do over here, right click, or you can go to cluster, new cluster, right click, tell you to use connect to existing cluster or you put a new cluster. And from here you can put a host. Cluster first. Okay, so connect to the host that is to be part of the new cluster. Select the cluster. So that's, we're going to call it an LB. We need to connect the host first. Connect the host. I don't know. What was it? Cloud? Cloud? I don't have a DNS yet to connect it. Let's see. Yeah, I found it. That's the name of my server. And as you see, I have a three different addresses here. I have 3COM Ethernet. I have this is virtual switch. And this is the Ethernet which is 12. So in the real world situation, these two addresses are supposed to be different. It's supposed to be on a separate network. The Ethernet and the network right here. 3COM. So if I go to 3COM, maybe I can change it. That change adaptive options. No, I can go properties. Here's the following address: 192.168.11.100. Okay, this is the lobby. What she's supposed to have. Right here. Cloud dash S. My cluster. Okay, so that's correct. So that's my cluster interface. And next. Okay. Notice on the priority unique host is in it. So put it at 1. See that? Put it 1. If I want, I can select anything. I have a range from 1 to 2. So you can go next. Now, the cluster IP address. The cluster IP address are shared by every member of you add. So it's going to be 192.168, maybe 12.100, which is better word. This is too cool. Okay, also you can use IPv6. You go next. Or internet name. So I don't know. Like we said, NLB, dot ABC, ABC. Okay. You notice that the IP address right here and generated network address for it. This is going to be the option we talked about here, unicast, multicast, AGMP, if your machine supported. So I'm going to go with the default. And this is where you go to the port number setting, okay? So you can go edit right here, and you can say from what port to what port. So I'm going to use maybe port 80, port 80 right here. And this is TCP. And we usually use a multiple host. That's what we're going to do. Okay. And you finish. Now we add the first one. Okay. And it's going to take a while to refresh. Pick it up. Now it's up. It's green, so it's up. So now you can do the same thing. You go over here to the cluster and right click, you add host, as many hosts you want. So maybe I can do that. And for example, over here, you can delete the host, host property, status, whatever you want. So this is where you can go and change. And that's the default state and started, like we talked about, or you can stop it or suspend it. Anyway, we'll stop right here. We'll resume to finish the chapter tomorrow. Maybe tonight, if I have time, I can create a few clusters in the virtual machine instead of using the physical. Any question at this point? No questions? Okay, so I'm going to stop right here, and I'll see you at 9, 25. For the time being, I need to take care of my sinuses. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. If you have a question, I'll see you in a few minutes. All right.